In this section, we discuss about the 4 dimensions of service management, and I would like to start with an introduction on this concept. First of all, let me explain what is the purpose. Why do we need to think in this 4-dimensional model? The idea is that whenever we design, we implement, or we deliver services, or when we apply service management in general, even if we are talking about IT services, it doesn't mean that technology is the only concern. So let me give you an example. Let's say that we want to build a coffee shop somewhere in a downtown area in a large city. We want to sell coffee, and we are now in the design phase, and we are trying to imagine how this business is going to work, how this model is going to work. So how do we apply the 4-dimension model on this example? What about people? Do we need people in such a business model? Well, probably yes. We might need at least a person preparing the coffee. We might need an additional employee taking care of the orders. We might need somebody cleaning the tables, serving the coffee at the tables. It depends on the choice, on the size of the coffee shop. It depends on the number of tables, right? So we will probably need to have people. We also need to decide what kind of abilities and skills and capabilities people will need to have. And we also need to establish how many people, when do we need to recruit all these employees, and everything related to them has to be considered in advance in the design phase. Also, the other dimension, it's about information and technology. Even though this is not an IT service, do we need technology for this example? Well, probably yes. At least we will need a coffee machine to prepare the coffee. We may also need a POS to accept card payments. We may need a website to promote our business. So there will be some technology involved. And we also need to think about what kind and what amount of information do we need to store and process in order for this business to work. Do we need to store any personal data of the customers? Well, probably not. But do we need to have a catalog of services and products? Probably yes. We need to maintain this information? Definitely. We need to have an up-to-date price list. We probably need to have pictures of the menu, of the different coffee options, and so on. So there will be information involved, and for sure we will need some form of technology. Will we rely on suppliers? Most probably yes, because we will need at least a supplier for coffee, another one for electricity, for water, sugar, and so on. So there will be a dependency on external parties. We will need to rely on suppliers also. What about value streams and processes? What is the purpose of this dimension? The idea is that even if you have all the other components, if you do not define clear processes, it may be difficult to be consistent, to know what to do with the other components. So you may have the right people, you may have the right technology, you may have the right suppliers, but if you do not define processes, basically you don't know what to do with all of this. So we also need to have an operating model, and this is given by creating processes and value streams. And we will go into much more detail in the following videos about this idea. What can we see in this image here? Again, you see the 4 dimensions that I've just introduced, and we can see there is an overlap between them. You can see that they are all together in this picture, and they overlap with each other. And the reason for that is that whenever we make a decision regarding one dimension, our decision will have consequences in the other dimensions. For example, if we decide that we have to use or we want to use a particular technology, then the people involved in our business, in our service, will need to know how to operate that technology. So once you decide something in one dimension, it will have an impact on the other dimensions. For example, if we choose a particular supplier, we may have to adapt our processes or even change our technology to be able to work with that particular supplier. What about the number of options that we have? Do we have unlimited freedom when we design a new service? Do we have any constraints regarding the 4 dimensions? In the real world, there are always constraints, and this is the subject that we are going to talk about next. ITIL basically presents this list on the left, list of constraints. These are some external factors that we cannot actually change, we cannot actually influence, but they will definitely constrain the number of options that we have when we design a new service. For example, there might be political factors. like a very unstable political environment, laws and regulations changing very fast, very often. That's going to be very tricky to manage because it's difficult to align to something which is in continuous change. Economical factors. For example, how much money do the consumers have in that area? If I'm trying to sell a very expensive coffee, but the consumers cannot afford that, maybe it's not the best idea. Social factors. I have to look at the social norms and the culture on that particular location. Are people accustomed, they are used to buy coffee? And is that a social norm? Is that a habit? It's something that happens often? Or it's completely unheard of in that particular area of the city where I'm trying to open the coffee shop? Technology can also be a constraint. It's also an external factor. Do I have the required technology? Can I find the right coffee machine that I am looking for? Are there any options regarding automation? Legal factors or environment factors should also be taken into account. The idea is that this will influence and they will constrain my options regarding how to design the service, but I cannot actually influence or change them usually. So I really need to understand these external factors before I'm trying to apply the 4-dimension model. That would be the key message.